Jeffrey Paul Ross, once again for nextlevelguitar.com. Today we will be discussing and working on beginning Gypsy Jazz guitar. Gypsy Jazz is a genre that's been growing in this country and around the world the last 20 years or so. It was single-handedly started by a gypsy that lived in France around the time of World War II, a guy by the name of Django Reinhardt, who you've probably heard of. And this is a beginning lesson. And before we actually get started playing, I want to discuss, there's a few things about the Gypsy Jazz style and technique that you need to know if you're going to approach this seriously. If you want to get the sound, you can play the same licks and might not get the sound because you're not using the right hand technique that the gypsies used. And what that is they basically refer to it as the downstroke technique or the rest stroke. And the basic rule is that whenever you transfer to another string, whether you're going down this way or if you're coming back up, when you move to another string, the rule is it's a downstroke. And that's what gives the Gypsy Jazz style its sound. It's a more percussive, it's not quite so fluid as like some of the American jazz players. It has, I wouldn't say a choppiness to it, but it definitely has like a strident kind of rhythm to it. And also, it creates volume. Your notes are going to be louder, just as a rule of thumb, with a downstroke as opposed to an upstroke. You've got more power in it. And they call it a rest stroke because when you're finished with one string, you're doing a downstroke, your pick should automatically be resting on the next string. We're working on this A minor arpeggio. We're going to be starting on that A note on the low 6th, the E string, on the 5th fret, which is your A note. First finger, downstroke. Now in this one, the second note of this scale, I'm also using a down. They call it like a double down. And I'm doing it kind of like Django. You know, if you know anything about Django, you know that his hand was burned in a fire and he only had 2 usable fingers. They said he could block chords with his damaged 3rd and 4th finger, but as far as actual playing melodic lines and stuff, that was all done with 2 fingers, which is amazing in itself considering the stuff that he played. So first finger, second finger, now we're going up to the 8th fret on the low E string with our second finger. It's actually a C note. And as you see, as soon as I finish that C note, my pick is resting on the A string. See where my pick is? See, I'm moving that A string. And we're gonna, with our first finger again, we are gonna fret the E note on the A string on the 7th fret. And as you see, now my pick is resting on the D string because our next note is going to be right underneath that last one. And you can try, I can't even do it now because I've so trained myself to do the down. You can try playing it like a bebop player would and use alternate up and down strokes with your right hand, but it's not going to sound like a gypsy. So you might as well, and I wish that when I started playing Gypsy Jazz, I wish that I would have started. And I had, one of my best friends is a guy named John Jorgenson, who I'm sure you've heard of, telling me, you got to get those rest strokes. You're never going to get very far. And I'm going, yeah, and I didn't. And I kept hitting the wall. And then I met a guy named Gonzalo Brugada, who you should check out on YouTube, who's one of the best gypsy jazz players in the country. And he told me the same thing. And they all told me that it would take about a year to really master it and get comfortable with it. And it did. Now, for a while, there was a transition period where I was working on the downstrokes. I was practicing it day and night, putting hours a day in. And when I would go do another gig, like a blues or a country gig, where I would revert back to the normal way of playing, which for me was when I played blues and country or any other type of music besides gypsy jazz, I never paid attention to which way this hand was going. It just, whatever felt right with what I was playing with the left hand. So it made it very uncomfortable for a while. I was like between a rock and a hard place. Because now when I'm doing those other gigs, the stuff that I've been pounding into my brain is there, and I'm, So it was a struggle. So I recommend that if you get into gypsy jazz, that you start with the right hand technique. And that's what we're doing now. And like I said, after about 6 months or so, it got to where I was comfortable with it, and I could go do another gig and revert back to my old style. But when I picked up the gypsy jazz guitar and the big pick, I like to use these big picks. They're called Wiegans. They're made by a guy named Wiegand in Holland, and a lot of the gypsies use his picks, like Stokelo Rosenberg and guys like that. Yeah, it's a very big pick, very thick, but it has tapered tips, and it kind of glances off the string. It gives like a quick release. And I know a lot of guys can play this style with a regular flat pick, but I need all the help I can get to do this, to pull this stuff off. And a flat pick will grab, like when I go off a downstroke and come back and do an upstroke, there's a little bit of a grab there. So that's why I like to use the Wiegand picks. We're working on this A minor arpeggio. And using the downstrokes. And if you caught that, coming back to, there's only like 1 or 2 upstrokes in that whole pattern, even though I'm going back this way. So, okay, so we got this far. So it's like down, 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 down. Have not played an upstroke yet. Now, some guys will use an upstroke there or there. I'm using all down. So we're on the A note on the D string on the 7th fret. The next note would be a C note on the D string, but now we are on the 10th fret. The next note, 2nd finger on the G string on the 9th fret. It's actually an E note. Next, now we're on the B string on the 10th fret. A note, 3rd finger. And as you'll see, we're just going up a minor scale. Now we're on the high E string on the 8th fret on a C note with our 1st finger. And then we're going to jump. And we're going to jump all the way up to this octave E note on the 12th fret on the E string. right back down the scale. Seems like I'm doing an upstroke down, then down. That note coming back down. Yeah, that note could go either way, I think, for me. It seems like the only upstroke I'm hitting is the A note on the D string on the 7th fret coming back down. Here it is again from a different angle. I'm going to play it slow. Just watch the strokes of my right hand. So now see there, I went to an upstroke. Then down, 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 down. Remember the rule, every time you go to another string, it's a downstroke. Now there, that's the 2nd note on the same string, and I go to an upstroke. Then back to a downstroke. Yeah, so that is basically in a nutshell the Gypsy right hand technique. If you listen to all the major players, you know, guys like Chavelo Schmidt, you know, the Rosenbergs, Angelo DeBar, you know, all the gypsies from Europe, they're all using it. And, you know, there's a guy named Michael Horowitz, I think he's in Seattle. He wrote a whole book on the subject, you know. So if you want to get that deep into it, but I basically gave you the nuts and bolts of it. And once again, like I recommend, like if you want to learn Gypsy Jazz, before you start figuring out the tunes and the riffs and stuff, get that under your belt. You'll be a lot happier. Okay, and once again, this is Jeffrey Paul Ross from nextlevelguitar.com. Be sure to check out our website. We've got over 850 different types of lessons and examples, and we'll see you again.